Alright, so let's talk about the first Friday the 13th film in the franchise that to me is really, really bad. I think that the first seven I really love, and I thought part seven I love but had a little bit of a little steep decline, but I still loved it overall. I thought that the first seven were really, really fun and really, really great, just being fun, entertaining horror films. And I think that Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, is where it gets bad, and this movie is really bad. Um, like I said in the last review for Part 7, I think that the characters were not as interesting, but there were a few exceptions. Like, I like Tina, and I thought that Melissa was made me angry because she was such a good actress in that movie. Like, she literally made me so angry with this character. And the mother and Dr. Cruz, I thought that they were great. They had great performances in the movie. Like, they had great charisma. And in Part 8, I cannot find a single character where I felt the same way about any of these characters. I thought that none of these characters were interesting. And first off, I don't blame any of the actors. I think that the actors probably just they have a hard thing to do. It's like this is the eighth film in a franchise that is typically the same movie almost every time. Even though I love them, they are typically the same movie almost every time, with some exceptions like Who the Killer Is or whatever. But in Part 8, I thought that all of the actors to me were not good. I thought that they really were bland and so uninteresting. You want to talk about one of the worst, like, the acting in the movie is the beginning where these two kids who are on a boat in Crystal Lake. Crystal Lake is not connected to the Atlantic Ocean, but yeah, they're on Crystal Lake, just on a boat, having sex, and then the guy gets killed, and then Jason, like, the girl hides, and Jason's gonna get her, and there's this one little short scene of her hiding in this little, like, compartment, and she's making it look like she's supposed to be scared, but she's literally making it look like she's laughing, and it's bad. And again, I don't know if I blame the people for this, but maybe I should. And I don't want to be mean. I don't want to, like, insult people's acting, but, like, man, I thought that was so incredibly bad. Just the way that she was literally did not look scared in the slightest. Just was literally laughing almost, like. And I don't know if that's her fault. Maybe she just couldn't find a good, like, scared face. Or, like, they could have done another take where maybe she looked a little more scared, but they might have just went with the first take. So that, to me, was really stupid. And I think that... So she dies. The main couple... The couple at the beginning dies on the boat on Crystal Lake. And then you meet the main characters, Rennie and Sean, and all these other disposable characters that are not interesting at all. Even though Rennie and Sean aren't interesting either. And like I said, I'm not gonna keep saying this a lot, but man, the actors, I think they weren't good in this movie, but I don't know if they could have done anything, especially being the eighth film in this franchise. And these characters didn't have as much of a reasoning, especially the main girl. She didn't have much of a character reasoning to feel more caring towards her. Like, I felt like in the last one with Tina, you really cared for her because she had the abusive father who she killed, and then how she had Dr. Cruz exploiting her psychic abilities and having all that stress on her. I thought that it made a more interesting character. This Rennie character is literally just, her issue is that her creepy uncle that is aboard the ship too pushed her into the water, tried to make her swim, didn't go in to help her, so she almost drowned, and then found Jason underneath the lake trying to grab her. And it's literally just Part 7 again, except for the Rennie character is upset because of him doing that, of her uncle doing that, and her uncle is like Dr. Cruz, where he's just being a shitty person, and then he dies a death like Dr. Cruz does. He just dies, I mean, not the same way, but, like, he dies in like, just the same kind of story thing. He's literally just there to be a horrible person, does almost the exact same thing as Dr. Cruz in Part 7, dies a horrible death just like Doctor Who does. So it felt like this was a really very much of a repeat of part 7 just in terms of the story. And the difference with this one, I guess, is that they're going to New York, and that's the gimmick of the movie. But the thing I love so much about this movie is that only the last 30 minutes of this hour and a half movie are in New York. And it's literally... and a lot of scenes are shot in Vancouver. So it's not all authentically in New York. It's literally just... there are things in New York, like Jason in Times Square. Like, there are moments where it is actually in New York. And apparently in an interview, in Crystal Lake Memories, that Blu-ray documentary based on the book, where they're talking about all these movies. The director, Rob Hedden, I think is his name, who directed this. I don't know what else he's done, but he directed this and was saying how the budget was so small that they could only do like 30 minutes of the movie in New York, and then he only had like 3 days in actual New York to film this. So he did his best. So I don't blame this guy because of budgetary restraints. I don't get why Paramount would tell him we can put him in New York, but then he's only going to be in the last 30 minutes, and they're not even going to fully be in New York. They're going to have a lot of scenes in Vancouver to cover it up to make it look like New York. And then, so I don't blame that director, and I don't blame him on the writing and stuff. I just feel like this movie was just so similar to the last one. And like I said, you can argue all of these movies are the same, but to me, I felt like the other ones had really, for the most part, interesting personalities and characteristics about them, even if they're cliched characters. But every character in this was so exactly the same as all the other ones. I don't remember her name, but the girl who's just like Melissa from part 7, who is a bitch too, but she dies like 30 minutes in, so I'm glad I don't have to deal with her. And she was more annoying than Melissa was, and Melissa gave me that anger because she was just so obnoxiously horrible. And this character was just annoying and stupid, and then I'm glad she didn't last through because the acting wasn't as good either. But like I said, there's so many things similar to Part 7 in terms of the main character with an older figure who's a douchebag and did something douchey to the main girl, and how there's a bully girl who's just like that in both of these movies, in 7 and 8. And the love interest is the same as Part 7 and Part 8, where they're just there. They don't have much to do. They're not interesting. And they're not. And the acting in this movie, like I said, is really terrible. Like I said, I don't blame the actors. It's just like, what can you do with this? And I think that it's also the least goriest movie out of all of them, I think. Like, the MPAA has always hated this franchise. They have edited so many things out of all of these movies, especially up to Part 8. And after that it was different, but Part 8 especially, they edited out a lot of crap, and then it feels very, very clean. Like, it feels like a very clean horror movie. There's barely any violence, and I go to see that in a horror movie. I go to see like the carnage, the fun. Like, it's supposed to be like outrageous, where you're supposed to be shocked, but this was not shocking at all. And this just did not have any good. It didn't have really anything good about it. The more I think about it, I feel like it really suffers from being so close to the last one and being so close to every other one, but without the charm and without the charisma that a lot of these actors in the previous films had. And it's so insulting that it's just basically Part 7 again, with all these character stereotypes of the main character, the older mentor character, and the bully character, and the love interest. They're just the same thing as the last movie. So it's so insulting that it's literally just the same movie, but made way worse. Almost none of it is in New York. Jason is just on the boat for an hour. It should have been just called Jason Takes a Boat to New York, or a Trip to New York, because he barely is there. And then the ending is like the worst ending out of all of them. Like, I think this one is the worst ending. And I thought Part 7 had kind of a cheesy ending with like the dad coming back up, but he didn't look like he was rotted or anything, and he was down there for like 10 years. That doesn't make any sense. But I will give that movie that way over this movie where they go, like Rennie and Sean, the characters who are the last ones alive, are down in the sewers in New York. And apparently, where they're at, every night at midnight, it floods toxic sewage throughout the whole area. So they get up on these stairs coming out where it's closed up top, where they're trying to get out of the sewer, and Jason is on their tail underneath them. But then Jason gets splashed with all the toxic waste, and then Jason just literally, like, this is so hard to explain because it is one of the dumbest, like, endings to a horror movie I've ever seen, where Jason will, like, he gets splashed with the toxic waste, and then he literally becomes a little boy again. He's just literally a 10-year-old kid just laying in the waste there. And I read on Wikipedia, they made it sound more smarter than the people who made this movie did, but in Wikipedia it said, like, Rennie imagines the final look of Jason Voorhees before he's gone, where he's a child again, which makes more sense than the movie because they don't explain that. And I hope that's what really is happening, that Rennie just kind of has a vision looking thing of Jason, like, as a kid, and not Jason as a literal child turned from toxic waste. That is so stupid and so, like, that is one of the dumbest endings to a horror movie I've ever seen. And this really has few redeeming qualities. Part 8 just, I mean, there's a couple moments where he's in New York and it's fun, but it's barely anything in the movie. It's like I said, it's 30 minutes of the movie, the last third, barely all in New York. A lot of scenes shot in Vancouver, but with that dumb ending, and with the bad acting, and with the blandness, and with it barely being in New York, it just, to me, pales in comparison. It's such a drastic difference between Part 7 and Part 8. And I've never loved this one at all. I think that I've always had issues with it, but the more I watch it, the more it gets way worse. It always gets worse every time I see it, and it never improves. And I feel bad for it, but also I don't, because I think it's a piece of shit. But it really is as terrible as people say it is.